Hello.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming. Just to start off with, we'll do a quick round of introductions. I'll kick it off. I'm Phil Fogel. I'm the founder of Cork Protocol. We're building a risk tokenization layer for DeFi, so the ability to create, price, hedge, and trade different kinds of risk in DeFi in a composable tokenized way, whether it's duration risk, liquidity risk, or DPEG risk. We're just building out this as a new primitive.
Awesome. I'm Mathieu Baril. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Octav. We are a platform intelligence for digital asset manager. We help any asset manager with reporting, reconciling, tracking their asset.
Kody Sale, leading product marketing at Obol. We're building DBT on Ethereum, helping to keep the consensus layer decentralized.
I'm Weso, CTO at Cap. We're building a three-party private credit system on top of Symbiotic.
I'm Nick, the founder of Mellow, and we're building institutional vault infrastructure. We work with all the major node operators. We work closely with Cap, with Lido, and basically we're providing the technology to build different structured products on chain.
Awesome. So this session is titled The Credit Layer of Restaking, Yield, Risk, and Guarantees. I think a good place to start off would be is, what does the credit layer mean to you in restaking? How is it evolving and going beyond basic staking and lending?
Okay, this is a layup for me, I guess. Restaking generally was just for validations or this economic security layer for a lot of different products originally. And so I think Cap kind of pivoted what we can utilize restaked assets for. And basically we're creating a surety bond market via the restaked assets against private credit loans. And so this was the really first use case of not only something that can actually be slashed, but also redistribution when it comes to restaked assets. And so I think now we're starting to see, okay, well, if we want to produce revenue in these shared security systems, which is not happening right now, there's just nobody's producing any revenue, you have to add levels of risk. And so Cap is doing that obviously via its private credit infrastructure, but there's a lot of other opportunities now for insurance type products and stuff that is going to be a little bit more risk on for the delegated assets and actually now going to be revenue producing.
I would definitely want to get more into Cap and the model as we go, but curious if anyone else has a thought on how you sort of define this credit layer in restaking.
I think it's maybe we should speak a bit broader and not just about the restaking, because I think any things around undercollateralized credit right now make a lot of sense just because it's not that much sources of yield in the space. And this helps to bring new yield sources to the space, which can be later looped or used as collateral or whatever in other protocols. And in this case, it's basically that makes the whole system more sustainable because you're tapping into TradFi in this case, and you're getting much more use cases for the capital that is idle or it has low yield right now. Then you can just get more yield sources and then use it for building different products on chain. So it's kind of base layer for building other financial products on chain. And especially when different teams from TradFi will be coming to the space, and we already see that everything is shifting towards on-chain in TradFi. And when everything will be on-chain, I think private credit, it will be a super common thing in the space, in financial space, and it will be on-chain.
There's billions of dollars of unsecured credit demand, billions. And so it's some of the highest yielding you can get, obviously with associated risk, but just getting even a fraction of that on chain will deliver amazing yields.
Yeah, and at Octav, we work with a lot of asset managers that are professional coming from TradFi and they want to come in DeFi, but they only have overall collateralized loan. That doesn't make sense. Traditional market don't work like that. You need to be able to be more efficient with your collateral. So you have to have a credit, but on-chain credit is hard. You don't have KYC and ML, all this. So that's why this credit layer is super important, but really hard to build.
Yeah, I guess if the entire institutional market is moving on chain, then hopefully we can actually upgrade their infrastructure. I think currently it's pretty opaque on and pretty complex. And my hope is that if we bring it all on chain, there will be verifiability, auditability, and instead of just dumping all this legacy infrastructure on chain and still having the same problems that exist in TradFi.
Yeah, so like jumping into where the like differentiation between restaking as a credit layer and just credit in general, right? What's the state of restaking today outside of CAP, which has a great interesting use case there, right? For the most part, most restaking has just been used for points farming and not really, creating any sort of real economic security or providing any source of meaningful yield. Do we think that that's sort of like the steady state, or is that coming? Is there something that's coming in the restaking space that's going to change that?
Well, slashing just got turned on. So of course it was like risk-free yield for so long. I think the biggest challenge all of the shared security systems have right now is how do we get the people who are getting the risk-free yield, which is just essentially just like, obviously the staking yield plus whatever the premium is they're getting above that, either, points or, governance tokens or whatever. And how do we convert them to doing more risk-on stuff, which is like slashable AVSs? And I think that's a pain point right now. So both of the systems, I think, are probably trying to work through exactly how does this, now that slashing is live, now that there's more AVSs building slashable AVSs and there's more risk on opportunities, like how do we convert this risk-free capital that is like billions of dollars? I think it's like Symbiotic's like $1 billion and Eigen has like $12 billion. All just sitting there like risk-free. How do we get them to start to participate in like, risk on AVSs? And I think, that's going to be really the unlock for these systems. Like, how do we can continue to convert them? How do we also get like people to build these meaningful things where they feel comfortable taking the level of risk and starting to move their asses? And how do we convince the LPs to do so?
It's going to be a spicy take, but I think that we got a lot of capital in this protocol without all the real stuff that we're supposed to do, right? There was no AVS. Now we are starting to see some, and some of them are generating revenue. But like Weso said, like the slashing is coming. So now do you really want to go into a Symbiotic or Eigen layer and have a risk to be slashed for 3-4%, where you can go on something that doesn't have slashing and give you 4-5%? So there's a need for a real product on these platforms so that the risk is worth it for the reward.
I think maybe I would add that it's important to understand that restaking itself, in general, it's insurance mechanism. It's not something about like building some DeFi protocols or something like this. It's all about insurance, and depending on the slashing mechanism, either you get slashed and assets are getting burned, or it's the case where assets are getting redistributed, like in case with CAP, or in other cases with Catalysis and some other protocols building on top of restaking. So in this case, it's getting much more clear which financial use cases we have with the restaking. And I think that there will be much more financial use cases with the restaking and not just things around building consensus or something like that.
Do you think there was like a point of confusion, though, with all the pre-deposit stuff? So people were sitting so long in risk-free opportunities that now, conceptually, it's supposed to be like an insurance protocol, but like the people don't view it as that. So even like the LPs that are in there. So you have all this liquidity that you built in via the pre-deposits, and now it's like, hey, now we want it to work like how we thought it was going to work. And people are like, well, no, I don't want to take that level of risk.
To be honest, I think that after November 10th, people starting looking into risks much more. And right now, I think that like when slashing goes live, people will really look into what's happening, how slashing mechanisms work. So I think it gets much more clear both for curators and asset managers and LPs in terms of how systems operate. And I think also it makes sense to get really professional people on the asset management side. And like we have lots of really good teams already in the space. And they should be also educating LPs in terms of which risk they're taking.
I think on this, just to add in on this, I think the LP that are right now in this protocol have no idea that it's a reinsurance system. They have no idea. Like the moment they get slashed for the first time, you can be like, what the hell happened? So I think there's a lot of education that need to be done. And then we probably need real people, like real institutional or professional people that allocate LP, but that they know what they're doing like right away. Because right now, a lot of the TVL has no idea. They're just farming the points.
So you're saying we're all apes then? We're just aping it?
Yeah, yes. Right now, still a lot of hate, and it's like it was all DeFi stuff, but to me, like the symbiotic and again layer stuff was more toward the institutional. Now we just have a bunch of retail forming the points, but it's going to be dangerous if something happens.
Well, I don't know that the restaking token, the LRTs, were like thought about that, right? It wasn't really like they built up risk curation. Essentially, they just built contracts and now they're utilizing loops.
But I think that's part of the point, right? Is that maybe these protocols were not actually built to be an insurance layer. They were built to validate networks and basically provide uptime on servers, right? The same way that basically what you're doing on ETH. And so everyone piling into the LRTs and the E3 staking was just like, oh yeah, I'm doing more of the same, but I'm going to get more yield because I'm validating more servers, right? And I'm making sure that they have uptime. Now that we're saying, okay, well, that's not really as useful as we perhaps thought, we're now moving into like, oh, can we use this technology stack for something else? And can we use and tap into the existing $13-15 billion of capital that's basically sitting there idle and turn it into risk capital? I think that's where the challenge comes, because you need that risk capital to be captive. You can't have it in the current setup that it's in where people think it's risk-free and also think that they can get out of it pretty easily.
Yeah, that's going to be a natural transition, right? So like, I think the obvious demand is for these protocols that are holding all these assets to essentially assess risk. And so I think either they're going to do it or somebody else is going to come and make a competitive product that's going to do it. And then it's going to be able to partner with all of the systems that are actually generating yield and going to get whatever the excess is on top of the staking yield, on top of the points. And I think then we'll see like essentially something similar to a better version. Well, I wouldn't want to talk about how good curation is because obviously we know it's not been very good. But like there should be really honestly like this exists in TradFi. Well, we should have somebody who's really good at assessing risk of who the counterparty is and then being able to allocate assets accordingly, not just like aping them into whatever the highest yielding thing is. And I don't know, thinking that that's curation, but I think that that layer could exist then with these shared security systems as somebody who's opting into obviously these slashable risk on ABSs.
So why is the sort of restaking layer the right technology stack for that as opposed to something else, right? Where, you know, you have this sort of intent in basically the idea of where restaking came from is not where it's going now. Is it purpose built for it?
I mean, composability, right? So you still get the underlying, you know, staking yield. It's still like proving the purpose of that asset, but the asset is still being productive, right? Validating Ethereum, and at the same time then being repurposed now for, you know, risk. So I think that that's, yeah, it still has a like an opportunity there.
I think also it's pretty similar in terms of how the system works with like just normal insurance and TradFi, because you reutilize the capital between different risk profiles. And at the same time, you can get reinsurance on top.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, you want to have an under-collateralized insurance model where you have someone who actually really understands like the value at risk and the correlation between the different policies that you're writing. Do we have that expertise in DeFi today?
No.
No.
Clearly no. And I think what you said is know what they're doing. That was the important part. Like there's a lot of people right now. It's the beauty of DeFi is that it's decentralized, so everyone can get in. But the nightmare is that everyone can get in, right? So we have a ton of people putting their money, thinking they know what is happening, but they don't know it. So I think there's like you say, we need to have education. Like every LRT project should pass a ton of their budget to explain what they're doing and how it works and what's the risk related to that. A lot of institutional are trying to come and they're like, it's way too risky. It doesn't make sense to me. But all the retail are getting in because they don't understand the risk. So there's a lot of education that needs to be done. And as you say, Weso, with the curator, like curators was the same kind of problem. I don't want to go too much into this because it's not our talk, but like curator did not educate at all what was the risk of the vote and all the system that the people were depositing money. And then we saw what happened on October 10, like we lost $19 billion. So
But they just didn't do really any risk assessment.
zero.
Yeah. And I think maybe like there are protocols like Gauntlet and stuff that do. I mean, they kind of were born from like this model of like actually doing assessments on like, you know, smart contract risk and like the feasibility of like how big the liquidity is in the token. So maybe if it's, you know, able to be liquidated and giving advice to, you know, lending protocols based upon that. So, you know, at least they have somewhat a level of understanding about like different risk, maybe in like the lending side. But I'd say for like, you know, we're talking about like unsecured loan markets. Like, I don't think that we have anybody like now that can just be like a risk assessor for, counterparty risk for whoever they're like obviously going to allow to borrow unsecured and at what rate. And then obviously also, producing the correct rate, that's associated with that risk level. I do think that's going to come though. It's something that we're building and it's something that we see as like a need. And I think honestly, like there's going to be people that say, hey, like now this is a market and somebody's going to come and deliver something like that. But it's in infancy right now.
Yeah, and honestly, I don't think that there's people in DeFi that know the entire risk. And I don't think that anyone in TradFi can understand the risk of DeFi. Because composability of everything in DeFi makes it 10x more hard to understand it. So it's not because you're a risk manager in traditional finance that you can arrive in DeFi and understand how it works. Because now you need to also learn the composability of DeFi to understand the real risk.
Yeah, I guess there's just like years and years of experience that people have had in TradFi, right? So it will take. I think it'll just take time.
I think also on the technical side, it's important that right now most of the systems, like in those systems, asset managers can do whatever they want at any time. And it also makes sense to have more systems where there would be at least time locks for updates and changing the portfolio, because otherwise you can put capital into one risk profile and end up with completely different risk profile. So we need more transparency on that, and we need some technical means to put some constraints on portfolios.
So what's the best way to do that, especially when we're talking about off-chain assets and underwriting them? Like, in theory, you can build smart contract guarantees that limit what you can do with on-chain assets. But how do you build those guarantees? Is it all just going to be off-chain paper agreements?
I think it's two things. First one is to have systems where we can get some proof of reserves. And the second thing is putting insurance on top as a mechanism.
Yes, I think these are two great things, but I think like the technology is not ready for off-chain stuff, really on-chain. Like we've spoke about RWA a lot and people are really excited at this. But at the end of the day, if there's not if you cannot trust the person that took the RWA and put it on-chain and you can go grab the RWA for real and that technology doesn't exist, then you're taking a risk. And crypto was built for don't trust, verify. And it's really hard to verify on like RWA stuff on-chain. So.
It depends who we're talking about, right? Like if it's like, some 21-year-old that's creating their hedge fund and getting like
who are you talking about?
Not nobody in specific. But they're getting, hundreds of millions of dollars and, obviously doing whatever they think is their proprietary strategy on like a centralized exchange. Like, I don't really know that we have a place for that in crypto. It's like not really our thesis and it's very opaque. Now, if the counterparty is an established institution with, $100 billion in AUM, and they want to participate inside, on-chain, unsecured, credit infrastructure, then I think being able to assess them just like we traditionally do and enter in SLAs is probably a pretty good means to do so. And I think as long as like the two parties that are producing that loan agreement, obviously can maybe have retribution, can enter into agreements, I think then we can see like a good system in place. I don't think that we really have a place for these like unsecured hedge funds in crypto, and we're just going to keep getting hurt and blown up over and over and over again. It's like, oh, like we're going to do it, but this time it's going to change. And, I think there was one that was like a transparency report, and it was like literally like 5 lines on a Word document that somebody wrote. I was like that's... We can't do that anymore. Like we're just going to have systemic issues, and obviously now it's like ruined.
But it's going to happen. The problem is that it's going to keep happening.
So it's not that I don't think there's a place for it. I think there's a need for transparency and some level of accountability. Where if you want to run an off-chain hedge fund that is tokenized, God bless. Like you should be able to do that as long as the people who are putting money into it know that that's what you're doing.
And we can create tools to help like reduce the risk as much as possible. I don't think we can reduce 100%. We're always going to have like loan agreement and lawyer involved in all this, but we can at least create as much as possible tooling to reduce that risk. And it reduces friction also for the hedge fund because they can actually move assets way faster. Like crypto does help them move faster, but we need to make sure we don't move too fast.
Yeah, but as soon as it's off chain, like it's just not going to be transparent. So like, no, it's still trust me, bro.
Well,
like,
but trust me, bro, is fine when it's Apollo, right?
But there's a lot more to lose, right? Like, and they have like, there's also like the underlying theory of like there is like something backing Apollo, like you could go to Apollo and say, hey, you lost me $50 million. I'm going to come after this legally. And reputationally, Apollo doesn't want to take on that risk, right? Whereas somebody who just raised $100 million, that is anon, like you know, what are you going to do?
I mean, Lehman also didn't want to like lose their reputation. They still blew up.
They lost their reputation.
Yeah, they lost everything. But like what I'm saying is like, yes, people traditional exist, and yes, they want to protect their reputation, but still, there's a risk. Like
There's always going to be a risk, but just the risk is less, I think, when you have established institutions.
Right. And so I think, you know, if you're going back to like pricing a swap or pricing insurance on these products, right? Stream, no one would have priced it, right? Anyone who actually was doing underwriting on it would have been like, thank you, no thank you. There's no price that I'm willing to take to do this, right? You look at, you know, Apollo's credit fund, you can easily find someone to price the risk on that and do it. And then I think that actually brings us back to CAP, which is you're basically doing a very similar thing, but without the brand name of Apollo, right? And how do you get the market to understand and price that risk? And like in real, like in actual like use case.
Yeah, so I mean, we're separating the parties. So one, we're creating liquidity. So we have CUSD, which is the stable coin, which, you know, retail can go in and mint with USDC. They can obviously earn interest via Stacy USD. But that's just creating like the borrowable liquidity pool. Then you have the other party, which is whoever's going to have the unsecured credit line. So, you know, whether that's Susquehanna or Flow Traders or whoever wants to borrow. And then you have the final party, which is the delegators. So what we did was instead of saying, you know, with a lot of the unsecured credit marketplaces we have right now in crypto, it's like, hey, I'm putting $1,000 in. Now I have the liability of this loan. And if they don't repay it, then like, what am I going to personally do as a retail user, right? Instead, we're saying, hey, like, no, you're fine. You're not going to be able to probably go after these institutions, even if they are established. Like $1,000 is not enough to you know, legal costs, and just you're not going to have the knowledge. So instead, let's take that risk and put it onto like a counterparty that can actually assess it, and then also can like enter into SLAs and be able to go through and like get retribution if needed. And that is essentially whoever the, you know, LPs or delegators are in our system. And right now we're using, you know, Symbiotic. I think we have like $50 million of delegations from Symbiotic and from different protocols. But essentially they would be the ones who are doing the risk assessment, you know, looking into, let's say, you know, flow traders and saying, hey, like, okay, for your credit, like we assess this level of risk and we're going to charge you this amount of rate. And we think that that's probably going to be enough to, you know, offer you this amount of loan, and then they can enter in an agreement. And so it's splitting up the different parties from those who probably have a little bit more opportunity to get the money back if something blows up. Also, it over collateralizes all of those unsecured borrows. So really, the people, like the retail people who are providing all the liquidity, aren't going to be the ones that are get hurt. They will be the senior tranche of the system instead of the junior tranche.
So curator on CAP won't be able to socialize the debt.
No.
Okay, good.
And each pricing is done per borrower.
Yeah, it's an individual basis. So even for like the loan, so like let's say SIG, right? They want to have 3 different parties as like the loans. It'd be 4 different like loan agreements. And depending on the risk level that each of those independent delegators provides, like so, like let's say they're saying I assess SIG as a 3%, you know, rate of return is what I want on my ETH, or you know, 5%. It's all individual loan agreements. So each time the LPs can kind of like decide based upon their loan agreements, like what they're assessing that risk rate is, and you know, duration, all that kind of stuff. So it's up to them.
And then what's the ratio between the capital that the delegators are providing versus that the retail is providing?
Yeah. Right now it's 50% LTV, so it's like 2 times over collateralized.
And then each individual pricing system is set up such that the retail is not exposed to anything.
Yeah, I mean, like essentially, even the liquidation threshold is like 80%. So there's like quite a buffer if we ever needed to liquidate. And now that both systems, Symbiotic and Eigen, both have like the redistribution, all of the liquidations process just like Aave. So they're just on-chain atomic liquidations where the assets get pulled from the underlying shared security systems, sent to the liquidator as the liquidator repays the loan. So it just works like over collateralization loans, which is probably one of the safest things in crypto right now. All with like, you know, ETH and Bitcoin. So it's like very, you know, no long tail assets and stuff like that.
Awesome. I'm going to move on to just the general credit layer, not using restaking. Nick, I'm going to read something you wrote on Twitter the other day. DeFi yield is a beautiful mess. There are rewards everywhere, staking, restaking, points, perp farming, looping, lending, borrowing your borrowed coins into oblivion. It's glorious and totally unmanageable at scale. First of all, I think that's incredibly accurate and astute. I think in the past few weeks, we've really seen how much of this, like how interconnected DeFi is and just how much risk is out there that people are not actually pricing and paying attention to. What do we all think is the solution to this? How do we make this manageable at scale? Is it another layer that sits on top of it? Is it regulation? Is it off-chain agreements? What actually makes this so that we can not have a beautiful mess that is unmanageable?
I think it's like on our level, if we speak about the vault infrastructure, like the things I was referring to, it's all about getting, first thing, more transparency in terms of providing all the data in the dashboards, educating users. Second thing is building systems for risk management. So let's say we're building vaults, but everyone has their own risk management frameworks. It's not structured in any form. It's not transparent. When you look into any asset management strategy right now on, that we have on-chain, you don't know the risk management model of the curator. So how can you evaluate what's happening with the strategy and how he will manage the assets that are delegated to his strategy? So in this case, if we will have some kind of, not standard of the risk management model, but kind of standard for the risk management itself in terms of reporting the risks, in terms of how we structure just the data to show it to the user. So this is something that I think we really need to build as part of our system or like more generalized solution. And that's what we're also working on right now. And also with the recent things happening on the market, I think on the one hand, it's really bad thing because people are losing money and some teams are probably shutting down asset management and curation on chain. On another hand, I think that it's very healthy for the market in general, longer term, because I hope that people will start looking much more into where they're putting their capital in. Probably in half a year, everyone will already forget what happened, and like it will be another loop of just chasing the highest yield. But I think that with such events, at least some people are getting really educated about what's happening on the market, which risks they're going to take. And also, we already see more professional teams coming into play with the asset management, which I think makes a lot of sense. And I think that like there will be more diversity in terms of risk profiles. And I hope that people will continue looking into the risk they're taking.
Yeah, I think that just tooling, I guess tooling goes in two directions. One is like you could obviously just create a wrapper and create a new front end and make it look really pretty for people to deposit, and that's probably not the right path. The other path is creating, like Nick mentioned, just transparency frameworks and ways for users to very clearly see. Maybe not the exact curation, but maybe in a future world there is some like ZK proof that shows some the on-chain path is credibly, I don't know. In a future world, it will definitely mature, and hopefully there will just be more transparency around, these black boxes that we're all depositing into.
I mean that's what we're literally building that since forever. But we work with Mellow and we work with Cap, and it's really hard to have everything perfectly tracked. Like Oracle problem, pricing problem. There's so it's a big challenge. The thing is, no one didn't care about data and all of this because it was not generating yield. It was we don't care. When October 10 happened and 19 billion was lost, we got so many people knocking at our doors. Can you help us have a transparency board and all this? Fun fact, before Stream blew up, the Friday before, I had a meeting planned with the CEO of Stream to do a transparency board for them. He never showed up, probably because he was already blew up. But so I think that the problem also is that the money of VC and retail and everything is being put into yield generating system, but nothing is being put in toolings. And tooling is I'm trying to build XYZ to prove you transparency for just this asset, and people don't care. We work with DeFi Llama, no one were paying them forever. All the data structure of the DeFi world was never really appreciated or never a lot of energy. And now we're seeing a lot of people coming to us and we need to do it. So hopefully it's going to change. But like Nick said, in 1 year, people will forget that and they're going to go back to the yield. So hopefully institutional will keep want to have this data. Like we work with people from 25 million to $1 billion, and they don't touch anything unless we have the data for them to show them every minute what's the value of the data. And so there's a lot of stuff that they cannot deploy because they don't have the information.
I also think it's funny. The stream situation is like a little bit more complex because I don't even know like anybody that actually was like actually in XUSD. A lot of the people I know that got hurt were like ones that were providing liquidity to like the curators, and the markets were hard coded to $1 for XUSD. So like they just didn't function like they should have when it depegged. First, lack of understanding what the on-chain liquidity looked like for XUSD. Two, like not proper checks of the Oracle or relying on a hard-coded Oracle, which is like we're just ridiculous. So, I mean, like these are like transparency or not transparency. That's whether or not you got into XUSD. These are verifiable things on chain that should have been done by the curators. And so like the systems just need to be better. And I think you said regulation's like the last thing we should do, because now we're talking to people who have no idea what they're talking about and they're making rules structure for us. So I think like as an industry, we need to be better. And I would hope that the next wave of curators that come from this are actually doing proper checks. And if they're going to enter into markets, like can we not trust hard-coded oracles?
So I think a lot of the problem comes back to like how interconnected and composable everything is in the space. So, sure, like we don't know that many people who got hit directly on XUSD, but everything had a knock-on effect across the board. And so to actually be able to check whether or not you're exposed to some hard-coded oracle in a place where that's inappropriate, 5 steps away is still a huge challenge, even if you have all the data and you're doing it, right? Enforcing a compliance framework that says, go and check every lending pool that I potentially have exposure to through 3 steps of, 3 phases of removal. How do you actually do that? How do you accomplish that in a real way?
Like 5 layers.
Yeah.
7 and 8. I can tell you that. We have custom board with client that they ask us, like, hey, I want to deposit in this one. Can you tell me like all the chain of assets that are connected to it? And 99% of the time, one place is not going to work and be like, I'm out. That's why they don't come, because there's always one little thing. And also the thing is, it's really hard for the protocol to control whatever the other one people would do, because like you said, you wrap it, you put it somewhere else, now it's out of your control. So it's really, really hard to track everything. It's possible, but we need to have a lot of energy and we need to work as an ecosystem. I love the optimistic view of like, oh, I hope curators are going to be better. Never going to happen. Never going to happen. We need, as an industry with protocol and everything, to force them to do it and find a way. Like, don't trust, verify. That's crypto.
So like basically what we need is a fund administrator. How do you build a smart contract, functionally fund administrator that says, okay, this money is moving in the right places. No one's doing anything fishy.
It's we work with NAV Consulting and From Medium, which are the like 2 biggest fund admin that manage that accept crypto people, and they still use like snapshot of portfolio for their fund admin. Like all of them come to us as like, can you help NAV because it doesn't make sense? And we go to NAV, it's like, well, we have a snapshot that's good enough. Like they don't understand. Like you said, if we go to regulation, we're gonna have traditional people coming to us and say, oh, you should do it that way, but they don't understand how the technology works itself. So there's a lot of like brain power that need to go into this, but it's gonna be hard because there's no money to go in this. I saw a talk at Trustless earlier about wallet beat to like evaluate all the wallet, and just this is super powerful also. Like we don't even like the wallet that we use, we don't even know what they're using, which RPC and everything. So there's a lot of energy to be done to be able to have an on-chain fund admin. A lot.
I mean, we technically do this with like smart contract upgradability. Like, contracts, shipping immutable contracts is probably the scariest thing you can do in your entire life. But if you have an upgradable contract, there has to be some accountability on the team or like some visibility to, hey, if I'm going to upgrade the contract, and people who are participating in that, contract, like they should know that, hey, the rules are changing, right? Because I'm changing the code, the rules are changing. And so, some protocols, like I know when I was at Beefy, we would actually put inside our Discord or Telegram, like basically an update of like, hey, this upgrade is happening and you can see it, and try to be transparent with that at the protocol level. I don't think it's much different than if like a curator is adding a different market. Like that should be time locked and it should have some sort of a notification so that people could like look at it and go, even if there's one person who has the knowledge to say, hey, like this market doesn't look, it's pretty sketch, and they can kind of raise the alarm. that transparency and visibility could help the system. But I mean, then we're relying on protocols to do that. And actually, a lot of protocols have shifted away from, hey, like let's have upgradable contracts and just time lock things to now let's just everybody trust us 2 or 3 multi-sig. There's billions and billions and billions of dollars of assets that are just controlled by like 3 people on a multi-sig, which is kind of insane.
Scary.
And with unknown OPSEC.
Yeah, like wrenches don't exist, right?
Right. I mean, if we're looking...
Maybe just one more thing is that if we speak about TradFi and institutions and the questions that they're raising when they're coming to on-chain and trying to tap it, I think it's also the case where we will start seeing more teams who are doing some kind of integration work for them, and they will be probably educating them about how systems work. And probably also some systems will be specifically built for them as kind of intermediary.
I'm hopeful.
Yeah, I mean, with all the mudslinging that's been going around in the last few weeks between curators blaming other curators and, Aave and Morpho getting into, what seems like a really silly war with each other, where's the risk hidden in DeFi? Who actually knows where the bones are buried?
I cannot talk. I signed too many NDAs, sorry. Honestly, like, there's a lot of asset manager that were taking a lot of risk. That's for sure. And I think that, I think stream was 93 million that they say or something like that.
Well, that was loss, but
Exactly, lost. But then the looping and everything and all the bad debt that exists, like I work with Morpho and Aave, both of them, but go look on some Morpho vault and you cannot look on the front end because it's hidden. You have to build your own front end to go take a look. But if you do it, you see some vault that have millions in it that are stuck forever because the collateral is USDX or whatever. And so you technically need to be super technical to see everything and go deep into this, and that's the problem. We spoke with a bunch of protocol team and said, guys, these asset manager of traditional want to deploy, but when they go into your front end, they don't see everything. So there's a lot of it's a lot of pointing people oh, it's your problem. Like Morpho and Aave, I think it's good for their marketing, good for them. But I think we also need to take a step back, look at every one of ourselves like protocol and say, how can I be more transparent? How can I give all the information? And that's the challenge because everyone doesn't want to share too much stuff. That's the biggest challenge.
It is really silly because both Aave and Morpho, you can pretend like you don't have bad debt, but it's pretty silly finger pointing. And I think right now people are just utilizing I would say a pretty disappointing period of time for us in as a builder in Web3 and DeFi. It was a pretty hard week because it just feels like then you kind of go backwards a whole year, you feel like, in where people are trusting things. And I guess where we're building towards. And then people are just kind of utilizing that as a marketing opportunity. And so I think it was kind of not great. So I think we should probably feel more compassion for everybody who really lost money through the whole thing instead of just trying to say, oh, this is why we're better than our competitor. So that's
also,
how I feel.
Like you said, you don't know anyone that was affected by stream because your circle are technical and they know their stuff, right? And so the people that lose money in all these hack and all these problem are always the same people, the newcomer. So for me, these are super net negative for the entire ecosystem because we're slashing, we're burning the new people coming in crypto, and the old one that has the technical knowledge and everything. You're oh, I'm safe, I'm good. Let's try to work for the newcomer because if we don't have new people, it's going to be a really small circle of nerds working together. So,
I mean, are the newcomers always going to be chasing the high yield? Is that why they're coming? Right? Are the newcomers really coming because they want to save 6% yield, or are they coming because they want a risky 16% yield, but the amount of risk that they're taking is not proportionate to being paid 16%, and that's what they need to know?
But if they are educated and they know the risk, some of them are not dumb. Some of them are coming for 16%. I get it, but some of them want to come with size and want to work with the ecosystem, but they don't know the risk. They don't understand everything. Not a lot of people know how Symbiotic and Ethereum layer work, and it's there's billion in it. So there's a lot of energy that needs to be put into educating everyone, not only newcomer, it's just everyone.
Where is this new retail that is coming in?
not many people, not retail, but there's a lot of institutional that want to come.
I mean, the Aave app. right? Like theoretically, that's bringing in a lot of going to bring in a lot of.
I mean,
new
hopefully, right? I mean, it also like the Aave app has a lot of interesting pieces, like the insurance piece. Like maybe that's something that starts to become a wave of something new in DeFi protocols. Like maybe there is a way for people to get covered up to a certain amount. The fact that it's an application and it's actually like something people will use and not have to go on a computer or some clunky wallet. I mean, so there's definitely a lot of pluses from it.
Yeah, I think until that insurance layer though is somewhat standardized, you're going to continue to see a lot of wonky things. Like, what does that $1 million of Aave insurance on the app actually give you?
Yeah, I really don't know how they do it. Honestly.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone's like, how do you do that? No one knows.
It's a pretty limited scope, right?
Yeah.
It's covering smart contract risk, which is great because you're bringing retail in, and like their biggest fear is like, I don't understand that piece of it. Like, I can understand borrowing and lending and the risk that's associated with that, but they don't understand the smart contract. But it's not necessarily covering like what happens if there is a big failure. What happens if there is bad debt? Does that insurance policy, and I don't know the answer to this, like, does that insurance policy cover?
No, it will absolutely not. And so then it's like, it's probably just marketing. And, when are we going to get to like where we actually can say something like that and it can be real? But I can tell you right now that I couldn't even imagine how much $1 million per user would cost in a premium. Like they would go broke. So I don't, no, it's not real. No.
All right. Any last thoughts? What's your spiciest take? Where's the biggest risk hidden in DeFi? What's going on? Any last thoughts?
I mean, no spicy take. Just we need to work on education and we need to work with data provider and stop chasing the IOCL. That's what we need to do.
Yeah, and definitely just not spicy at all, but just build frameworks around transparency, so the end user knows, what they're actually getting into, and maybe not retail, but institutions, and educate them. The educators have to be educated themselves, and that it might be part of the problem.
Billions of dollars in leveraged loops is probably the riskiest thing we have going on right now.
I would also just share that like when we're speaking with any institutional partners, then the first question they're asking is always like, explain me the risk. So we need to explain the risk.
Disclosures, transparency, and no more looping. Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for coming and participating. Thank you, everyone, for coming today.